Alex Pappas. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
So, Alex, ABM Maestro, I can read on your LinkedIn, you've got a lot of experience with a lot of different tools, and also you're a lover of most ball sports. First question, what's your favorite ball sport?
Oh,
Pickleball?
good question. I did play rugby in college, and so I'm kind of partial to rugby. It's something I wish I would have played before football because I would have been a much better tackler, I think. But yeah, that has definitely provided a lot more lasting relationships and opportunities for travel and other fun experiences. So definitely love rugby. It's near at the top of the list there.
Good man. Well, we'll have you in the UK because we're not doing too great at the moment. We've kind of fallen from grace there. But right, Alex, you have been, well, you were referred to me by Kelly uh, to come on here and tackle some ABM challenges. So are you ready to dive into question one?
I'm here with bells on. Let's do it.
Cool. So challenge one came in from Pierre van der Viesten at Adobe. And his question was kind of centered around sales and marketing alignment, which obviously is a big component to any ABM campaign being successful. And he asked if you could change one thing about how marketing and sales work together today, what would it be and why? Quite a controversial start, eh?
I'm glad we're starting here. I was kind of excited when I saw this question because it's definitely something that I've run into, and I imagine I'm not the only ABM practitioner or strategist that has had to deal with this. So it's a meaty topic. But I think if I were to change one thing universally across the board with that relationship, it would be ensuring that we're speaking the same language. I think that is probably the biggest miss that people have in this profession is that a lot of times the definition of success is different. What we're trying to achieve is often not communicated correctly, and so I think when you are not just aligned in the accounts that you're going after, but how you define what success at those accounts look like, I think is really start to bridge the gap with sales. I think I've run into this too with pilots where an ABM pilot might be um, focused on a particular effort that is measured with quote unquote ABM engagement metrics or something that is very maybe commonplace to the ABM world, like we're increasing engagement or website lift at these accounts, or webinar invites and acceptance and those things are looking really good. All great stuff, but sales is always going to wonder, well, what does this mean for me, right? Like, why should I care? And I think where I've gotten the most alignment is like your success is my success. So like, what do you care about most? And I kind of just like start the conversations around what are you trying to achieve? Like, what are your biggest challenges? Like what are you like not just your goals, not just your booking meetings, but like are you having trouble breaking into specific verticals? Are you having trouble connecting with particular job titles? And like get the conversation going, because I think if you start there, they realize that like, oh, you're on my team here, like we're going to be achieving the same things. And so um, I think that way you really break down the walls. And I had the pleasure of also going to B2BMX earlier this year in February, and I got to listen to a wonderful session. Probably my favorite session was from Leslie Allure at Flexera. I'm going to kind of just plug her here. And she talked about having the big three pillars of measurement and how that creates alignment. And she started with strategic, operational, and I believe it was tactical. And I feel like everyone jumps into the tactical of like email open rates and website visits and impressions and click throughs. And it's like, nobody cares about that. Like you got to match your audience. And the starting at the strategic was aligning to like a go to market goal and a priority. And then you layer it down into operational and like how you aligning how sales ladders up into that goal to how marketing supports. And I think that string connecting all those things together before you even get into the tactics really helps get everybody on the same page. So it's kind of a long-winded answer of saying start speaking the same language, and I think you're going to get more than a few champions, and I think you're going to find actual success in your programs.
Cool. Smash that answer. Superb. And I'm glad you mentioned pilots as well, because it's a good kind of framework to kind of go into the next few questions with. So, challenge two is ABM on a budget, and it came in from previous guest Gillian Condabudi. Lovely lady. She asked, what should, if you're a solo ABM practitioner, you focus on if you don't have any budget? Where should you start and how should you execute it? And I really like this question because I think a lot of people get deterred from ABM, which in my opinion is just good marketing because they believe it's super, super expensive. But if you had to be really scrappy, what are you doing?
Great question too. I'm a firm believer that ABM is all about adding value and providing focus, and neither of those two things needs a huge budget. So I think what a lot of people forget sometimes is that usually you're sitting on a really powerful tool without having to spend any budget, and that's your first party data. Um, that's free usually, and what you should do, or what I have found to be an easier path than trying to justify budget, is to come with a point of view and to use the data to kind of tell the story. Find a go-to-market goal or challenge that your organization is trying to address, and look at your first-party data and see what common threads that you can pull at that. Like, where are your best customers? Where are your highest usage? Where regions are you really working well in, and where do you maybe need to have more of a competitive takeout? Like, come with a point of view on something, but then use your data to help tell the story. And I think people forget that that is where so much of the insights can surface from. It's not always from a third-party tool. AI is there's so many free AI tools now too, where you can do research around what are my competitors saying in this particular market around this particular use case, and it will spin it up for you pretty quickly, which is great. That I wish that was available 10 years ago, but I think if you lean first into your first party data, and understanding that not all data is clean, but it's difficult to argue, with your own data. And so if you bring that thinking to the table, it allows a foundation for you to provide focus for your program and say, like, hey, we're going to focus on this area and here's why. And you can develop everything from internal content to first party webinars to outreach sequences. Again, all things that are pretty cheap or free, based on the insights that you're getting from your first party data. So I'd say before you even think about a third party tool, sit with your own data first and see what you can do there, because chances are you'll be able to tell a great story, and it will give you a cheap way to kind of bring your strategy to life.
You touch on all great points, particularly the first-party data, because I think, you could buy this big, expensive third-party data, intent data toolkit, but ultimately, first-party data is going to be the biggest truth that you've got, I think, always. And secondly, I second you on these free technology and tools. I built my career basically off email outreach. I used to manually validate all these emails. Then I found offshoring, and then I found Apollo. I don't think marketers today, and no, swear anyone going into marketing now that hasn't had a background doesn't know actually how hard it was. But I think it gives more experienced marketers an edge, because I remember trying to teach someone how to use these new tools, and they're like, oh yeah, cool. And I'm like, what do you mean cool? This is like mind-blowing stuff. And they don't use them. Yeah, they don't use it and leverage it enough. Right. Challenge 3 came in. ABM Innovation and Experimentation is the topic. It came in from Kyla Nuessa at MongoDB. And she asked, what's one unconventional ABM tactic that surprised you with how well it worked? A great question.
I put a little thought into this one, because I think as I was going through this answer, it wasn't necessarily an unconventional tactic. It was almost more of a strategy that we had at a previous firm I worked at, but it was a kind of a pilot around a CXO program. where we were doing some top-down proactive outreach to some of our target accounts in particular regions in the Northwest, or I'm sorry, Northeast. And one of the things that we did differently is that instead of treating the CXO program as a standalone, hey, we're only going to target this account going from the top down, we actually had a really nice feedback loop with our AEs and our SDRs that were also responsible for that account. And so the conversations that were being had at the top were also being communicated to how we were prospecting into other layers of that company. And that sort of feedback loop and those types of invaluable insights that were provided to the sales team from our C-suite who was doing some of the engagement helped kind of shape the narrative that we were using for our prospecting. And I think that cohesive message that we had from the top down and from the bottom up, and aligning it to use cases that we knew would be more aligned to, I would say, like CISO -1 or CTO -1. I think it was like VPs and directors, nothing below that. But when we took the narratives that we were hearing, concerns, motivations, priorities that the C-suite was communicating with us and weaving that into the communications that we knew would also be echoed for those other groups, you kind of had more of a holistic approach of going about prospecting to that account. And frankly, like we got our foot in the door and ended up getting not just the pipeline, but a deal out of it. And that was like a quote unquote must win account for us. So it was something that unfortunately we never scaled. We never really like formalized. And I think that's something I would look at and say, I wish I would have done different and found out a way to make that more formalized. But to see something like that, where I think a lot of CXO programs can be standalone, almost like you're only talking to the C-suite, we're not doing anything else. Finding a way to make it more holistic and, knowledge sharing across different groups. I think it's something that has like really knocked out of the park, and it's something that we're actually trying to bring to life here at CyberArk.
This is gold. Yeah, kind of. It doesn't have to be unconventional, I guess. You haven't disappointed Kyla or I. As much as I love that, I think actually what you said, there's more truth in that. Like a lot of people, especially me, my ADHD is off the chain. Like I'm always looking for these unconventional, unique tactics. But actually, if you just nail the basics, you're going to smash ABM. Like if you truly care about the prospects and kind of like the multi-threading and like that knowledge sharing that you mentioned, it does all come together. Challenge 4 came in from Jim Gilkey at Scrappy ABM, great guy. He asked, where do you go to find real campaign examples or inspiration you can actually use in your own marketing?
I love Jim and I love this question. I was just talking to Jim earlier this week too. I'm a firm believer too that you learn a lot from your community, and I really try to make investments into my personal and professional community. So that's kind of my go-to is I engage my community and I ask questions. There's certain groups I belong to where there's forums that are available for these types of questions and kind of get multiple different perspectives, which is something I really value. So I kind of start with the people who have either done it or whose opinions that I really respect and value and trust. So that's kind of my first one. Like Rev Genius, I was a member of Peak Community before too. I've always loved kind of bouncing ideas off of people in there and asking questions. Best practices that they've seen or heard. And then because I think when you're doing your own research, it's good to have that. There's plenty of research to be done, but when you do it with another person, I find that there's often additional context or things that they surface that they really liked. There's things that you don't always get from first party research that your community does offer, and so I really value that type of, again, kind of like knowledge sharing, where it's like it's not just a standalone. I'm going to read about this. It's like, oh, I like this because, and here's what else I was thinking about. It's like, it just kind of balloons into something more insightful. And so I always kind of lean into the community.
Great answer. I'm a total believer in that. It's like if you wanted answers, if that's it, you could go to ChatGPT and give you answers. But the leaning into your peers is what helps you identify your blind spots. And ChatGPT would, but like it doesn't know what it doesn't know.
Exactly. Yeah.
Challenge 5, engagement channels. This came in from Janelle Amos. all my favorite people today. She asked, when it comes, I actually, to be fair to Janelle, I amended this question slightly, but when it comes to engagement strategies, what are the top three channels you would prioritize and why? And obviously, it's going to be kind of, this very much depends on the company you're working for, but take this however you like.
Yeah, I thought a lot about this one too. I like this question because I think it always kind of depends on the focus of your program or your go-to-market goals. My first thought is that I always try to meet accounts where they are in the market. And so, depending on where they are in their journey and what our goals are, like what are we actually trying to achieve? Is it vertical expansion? Um, uh, is it a win back campaign? Is it something where we're trying to break into a region? It all that will all play into it, I understand. But if they really need to be more nurtured, I try really not to go into accounts cold turkey. And so if there's a way that you can start engaging with an account in a way where they need to either be made aware of a challenge, how you positioning it in context to their business, how you making it in context to their industry. The channels I like to use, it also depends on volume. I think if you're targeting a lot of accounts, you have that one to many. Um, I think you can do a lot with targeted like digital display, which can actually impact a lot of your first party engagement, and you start to get more website visits. You're doing more surround. I know people don't always think of display as like a traffic driver because I think you're more likely to get struck by lightning than ever click on a display ad. But if you're present and you're prevalent, I think around your accounts that you're doing this around at like one to many scale, I think it's important to see and be seen and to reinforce that. So like the channels that really allow you to do that, um, from a top of funnel all the way down, I think is really valuable. So if you're doing more of like a one to few program, I think again you're meeting them where they are in the market, but you're able to add a little bit more context and nuance. And so I tend to gravitate more towards engaging groups in group settings, whether that's roundtables, virtual, or versus in person, depending on your budget. I feel like when you're in that more engaged and one to few, you can make it more intimate. I think you should. And so there's avenues to go down that are a bit more intimate in that setting. Um, and then you can still layer on, context around intent that maybe you're seeing at the accounts and make it more relevant. You can make it more verticalized depending on, excuse me, who you're targeting. But I think like when I get down to like the one to few, I like to increase the intimacy and not just the ROI. When you get down to more of like a one to one, like say you're trying to break into 5 accounts or something, like you find a way to really curate the experience. I think like I really like curated landing pages that people can kind of choose your own adventure. They're relatively cheap to spin up too, um, and honestly, it sounds like a little maybe cliche, but like gifting helps break through. So if you're really trying to break through with somebody, you can. I'm not saying a gift card, but um, some of the most effective one to one and one to few strategies I've seen that have incorporated gifting and doing actual research on uh, an industry, an account, a contact at that account, and making a thoughtful connection through a gift is like one of my all-time favorite. I could go on probably a whole podcast episode on like effective gifting that has worked and where I've seen, because I think that really adds a human element that a gift card can't or that an email can't. And so I'm a big proponent of that. If you can really put some rigor around it and some process, but I know it works for me and I know what I've seen work, and that's one of my all-time favorites.
The thing with gifting, I would agree. You smashed that answer. Is again, all of this is personal opinion, right? So my personal opinion, but there's so much bloat with gifting, as you said, like the gift card, the hey, here's some socks, like there's a lot of swag that is just rubbish, and I would rather just eradicate 80% of that and only send gifts that are relevant to your industry, like you're saying. To me, they're the gifts that really kind of work. The only unconventional gift that I've heard that works was actually I found out on I spoke to Chelsea on this show, She got like personalized bobbleheads and set them, so it's not something you can just dispose of, but it's something they can have on their desk and they're constantly like reminded of their company. I thought that was kind of cool. Challenge six is how do we create content creation? So, like, how do you approach creating content for your target accounts? And you mentioned display ads in the last question as well. So, yeah, super curious here. How do you go about that?
Yeah. So we have our journey stages because we kind of have an overall go-to-market strategy, especially at CyberArk. And so we're obviously meeting accounts where they're in the market, and by journey stage kind of helps dictate the messaging and the channel. And so for the journey stages that kind of generally have more volume of accounts, we found a way to personalize it kind of at scale. So like sometimes you do need a little bit more of like category or brand awareness at that point. Like you're making a case or you're even surfacing a challenge that maybe they weren't aware that they had, right? But you're not going in there talking about a trial or talking about your product even. Um, so the content really has to ladder back to what is our goal for those channels and what is our objective for those accounts. And so a lot of times it's hey, we're creating a relationship, we're building trust, and those channels need to reflect that. As you get down farther and they're more engaged, we look for opportunities to customize or make it modular to their needs, both at an account level, an industry level, and sometimes a persona. We're looking at different research reports and kind of some first party data that we're providing proactively to them and saying like it's one report, but it can be modular in different aspects to different businesses. And so while it's one report, we look for opportunities for kind of like cascading content. So it's like what can be changed to make this more relevant to different groups in these journey stages that are kind of more engaged, and where does it add value to them? Like it might be one report, but some of the nuggets that we surface to them would be different depending on their title, depending on their industry. Their calls to action can be different. So we look for things that can be modular there. Um, and then for some of the bottom of funnel stuff, obviously we're looking at things that can help qualify and quantify a lot of the solutions. And so, like, what really adds value to people at the bottom of the funnel? Like, what helps them justify their needs? What helps them justify an investment? And so, people love data. I feel like data wins battles. And so, when you can surface data that tells a story, that's really where we have tried to bring that to life and not just make like a straight ROI calculator. We do it in a way that says like, this is the type of time you saved. And if you quantify that out over 4 years, like here's what you can do with that time. And here's where you can, save the money. And here's where you're making investments. Like you connect it from just a singular observation of like efficiency or times or cost savings and transform it into a narrative that impacts their business and at the end of the day kind of makes them look good. But that's obviously very hard to scale. So that's something that we kind of reserve more for the bottom of funnel converting type of content pieces. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, we're looking at ways to take the data and turn it into a narrative that really tells a story that's most relevant and impactful for those accounts, depending on where they are in the market.
Vital that you said that about the ROI calculator. Again, I'm coming in very hot with the opinionated things today, but I think people have lost trust in the generic ROI calculator, which is totally fair enough. But like to your point, if you've collected all these first party insights from them or even third party, and you can tailor it to speak their language, I think that's how you get those tools to still work in today's market. Question 7 came in from Chris Rack. Great guy on a journey right now building Mockingbird. So he's been in the ABM space for a long time. Mockingbird is now like a voice AI ABM technology. I totally did that a disservice, but Chris will, I'm sure, back me up at some point. He asked, is the MQL dying or still relevant, and why?
I love this question too. I don't think the MQL is dead, or it might be dying, but it's not dead. I do think the way we measured and valued MQLs though is dead. Um, I think there was an overemphasis on volume with MQLs, and because of that, people lost trust in it as well, which is one of the main reasons why ABM is and ABX has evolved to where it is today. Um, I think people lean into MQLs before because they're predictable. People are always looking at what's consistent, what's predictable, and so I understand that. I understand the measurement was really centered around that. Um, but I think in today's market, and I think in how people research and buy, you're really selling yourself short by over-indexing on MQLs because you're not taking a holistic approach to the account. You're really not meeting them where they are in the market. You're looking at a single individual on a buying group that's, I mean, I've seen everything from, you know, 6 people to 16 to 20 people are involved, right? So, you know, incorporating MQLs, and I think there's value in getting them at engaged accounts, and making sure that you're working it into your processes and providing those avenues for your sales team to still prospect in and get warm leads. There's value in that. Don't get me wrong. But I think the way in which we have measured and over-indexed on MQLs in past times is something that probably is dying and should die. If I'm being perfectly blunt, it's all about thoughtfully incorporating it into your processes and your measurement. It should not be your end all be all. Um, and I don't think it's something where you should be defining success of your programs because by and large, you can buy leads, they can be bad. You can throttle the lead scoring. You can do all sorts of things that can dilute those things down. And at the end of the day, I found it to be more contentious for a lot of teams than value add because you either have too many leads and they're no good because you had to throttle the criteria down, and then we're not getting enough. Even if they're high quality, we're not hitting our tasks, we're not hitting our things, and there's a misalignment there. So then you dilute them again, and then you bring your volume in. It's the constant back and forth. It's not ever value adding to both teams at the same time. So again, MQLs can be valuable to your team if you're doing it correctly and you're building it into your processes. But I think we have to get away from over-indexing on them because I think it ultimately does a disservice to your organization and to the groups that you're prospecting into.
It's like lead bloat. I love your response. Yeah, that's interesting. And also, not all leads are created equal, are they?
Right.
And it clearly depends on the buying group. Well, and like you said, yeah, the size. It's like there could be 4 people in a buying group, and if you get one lead in, that's 25% of it covered. But if there's like 60 people, then you've got no shot. Right, last 2 questions, just quick fire, just for fun. We've got a lot of tech at ABM Answered, or just like workflows and solutions to help people. If you could invent a tool or technology, what would it be and why? And if you can't think of anything related to ABM, I mean, you can create a household appliance if you want as well. It's up to you. Take it however you want.
Oh man, I like this one. I wish I could get my creative juices flowing even more. And this may even exist. So if someone DMs me or something that says, "Hey, idiot, this is something that exists," like hit me up because I'm down. I want to figure it out. But going back to gifting, I think it would be really cool if there was a way to scrape people's public profiles, put in, read their blog posts, read their LinkedIn, read their company profiles, what have you. Find out what they're interested in, give a budget amount, and then have them tee up like the ideal gifts that they think that this person would like. So, if they're following a lot of national parks or wildlife, and they live somewhere where they know that they say like to go hiking and they like vacationing at the lakes, tee up a gift that could really break through and connect them to things that they love, and provide like recommendations or thought starters. Like, I think it'd be so cool to kind of aggregate that data around people's interests and kind of like what makes them tick, and then find ways to within a budget make that connection with them. But and again, maybe this exists, but I always kind of think of ways to add value and break through on a personal level too, and I think that would just be something really cool.
That's awesome. It ties into what we were talking about earlier as well. But yeah, you are right. There need to be parameters. Like if it sees me following Rolls Royce, I can't just go and like, hey, you should buy Sam a Rolls Royce. That makes no sense.
Right.
Alex, final thing I'll ask you, you answered so many questions today, 7 from other people. Do you have a question for our next guest that you would like me to ask them?
So I know attribution is often a talking point and a challenge for a lot of EBMers out there, kind of even across different departments. And, what has been your best success in illustrating attribution and impact across your different EBM strategies and executions?
You had to go there, didn't you? The dreaded attribution, the biggest challenge of them all. Right, I will get that in there and ask our next guest. Alex, thanks so much. It's been technically, this has been a nightmare, but you have been superb. So thank you for joining.
The pleasure's been all mine. I sincerely appreciate the opportunity. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you.